Hello and welcome to Mindful Living, where we explore the art of living with the intention, balance, and inner peace. I am Avik, your host, guiding you through conversations on health, meditation, mental well being, mindfulness, and the mind body connection. Each episode features expert insights to help you grow, heal, and thrive. So, take a deep breath, relax, and join us on this journey to a more mindful and fulfilling life. So, let's get started.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to the Mindful Living podcast, where we explore concepts that elevate consciousness, enhance personal growth, and deepen our connection to ourselves and the world around us. Today, we have an incredibly fascinating guest with us, Jim Marshall. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you, Sana. Glad to be here.
Great. So, listeners, before we proceed on to the discussion for today, I would love to introduce my guest to all of you. Jim Marshall is a polymathic intellectual and human development engineer who has devoted over 50,000 hours to the study and practice of human potential. With a background in everything from psychology to philosophy to engineering and metaphysics, Jim has created and authored a revolutionary system known as Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. Sounds interesting, right? And in this episode of the Mindful Living, we'll take a deep dive into Septemics, what it is, how it was discovered, and how it can benefit and practically apply to our everyday lives. Whether you are seeking personal growth or a greater clarity in understanding human behavior, this episode promises to deliver profound insights. So, Jim, welcome to the show once again, and it's an absolute honor to have you today with us.
Thank you very much.
So, Jim, can you explain what Septemics is?
Sure.
And how you discovered this revolutionary system?
Okay. Let me just say, by way of introduction, so you have a context as to who I am and what Septemics is.
Sure.
I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I invented a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics, and published it in the book, Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to human beings occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7.
Mm-hmm.
Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which is unique, and together they span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any problem, dilemma, situation, difficulty that any person has that has anything to do with humans can successfully be analyzed by one or more of these scales, usually more than one. So let me tell you in a general way how this benefits people.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote this book to help people. I've had a lifetime of helping people.
Mm-hmm.
Each of these 35 scales provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the group, individual, or activity moves persons or groups up these scales, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. More importantly, just finding out what level you or another person is at on any scale is by itself inherently enlightening and beneficial. Every time you correctly spot you or another person on any scale, you have a realization. You say something like, Oh, that explains why my parents can't get along. Oh, that explains why Joe did that. And finally, once you know the actual level of a person, you can improve that person, whether it's yourself or another, by moving them up one level at a time. I have solved the gradient problem that has bedeviled mankind for 6,000 years. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Most people have problems and situations and difficulties and so forth, and they don't know how to solve them or address them. And the reason for that, more than 99% of the time, is that they don't know the gradient. Every good teacher, facilitator, therapist, counselor in the world understands that human development must be done on a gradient. You cannot make a couch potato into an Olympic athlete. There are too many intervening steps. So these 7 levels are the gradients for the corresponding 35 areas. If I may, I'd like to tell you the names of the scales, and then you'll know exactly what material is addressed in the book. Okay, so there are 24 individual scales, meaning they apply primarily to an individual. And there are 11 group scales, meaning they apply primarily to a group. These are the groups, these are the individual scales.
Okay.
The scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of mental ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales: the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales by itself could dramatically improve the life of the reader. And let me give you an example. I mentioned the scale of motivation. If I were to go out here on the street and stop some guy and say, "What's your wife's motivation toward you?" he would look at me like I was from Mars. And he'd probably say something like, "There are thousands of motivations. How can I possibly know that?" And I would say, "No, there are actually only 7 basic human motivations, and all the rest are subsets of these." And if I were to show it to him, he'd say, "Oh, well, now that you put it that way, I can see her motivation is so-and-so." Because he knows her, see? He knows her. And so once he looks at the scale, he can spot her on the scale. And then he'll say, "Oh, her motivation is that. And therefore that explains why she does this and this." See? Okay. So if you just take that little idea and blow it up 1,000,000,000 times in every direction, you get what this book is about. Now, you asked me how I came to discover this.
Exactly. That was going to be my next question.
Right. So the story really begins when I was accepted into engineering school at the age of 16. Now, at that time, I thought I would be engineering physical things such as airfoils, motors, electrons, and so forth. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, it was clear to me that I wanted to engineer the human psyche because it is the area of greatest unknown and difficulty. And more importantly, it is the area in which we as a race are failing miserably. 95% of the problems in industrialized society are because people do not understand people, don't understand the wife, don't understand the husband, don't understand the son, don't understand the boss, and so forth. And this subject completely undercuts that problem. So to make a long story short, I had a long career as a human development engineer using engineering principles and tactics and approaches to help people to improve themselves. Now, all of my clients improved as a result of our interactions. But beyond that, I started to notice after a while that I could predict the outcome of the session.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I never told this to anyone, but I made notes. And as the decades went by, I came to realize that the client would be at a specific level on a specific scale that I had previously observed. And as a result of our interaction, he would go to the next level up. Now, that happened thousands and thousands of times. The client knew nothing about this material. I hadn't discussed it with anybody. And every time this happened, it verified my hypothesis. So you have to understand, coming from a hard science background, that meant something to me. I was seeing this work without anybody knowing what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So by 1995, a couple of things happened.
Uh-huh.
One thing that happened was by then I had about 32 scales that I had simply observed in the sessions. Now you have to realize I would see it in the session, I would write it down, then I knew what it was, and then I would go out in the world, it would be right in front of my face. It was undeniably present in human phenomena. Then the next thing is that I had one day, I was pondering a difficult client, and I realized this client was at a level on a particular scale that I had not previously observed. I had this 6-level scale that I had known for decades that I knew was correct. And when I realized it had a 7th level, it was obvious to me where to insert that level into the scale. And when I inserted that level into the scale manifested mathematically, meaning all of these data jumped out at me. Now, the whole point of math is that you start with a formula or an equation and you coax data out of it.
Correct.
That is, for example, how Einstein found E equals mc squared. Everybody in the math and physics community knows exactly what he did. There's no mystery. So this phenomena of these data jumping out at me is essentially a mathematical phenomena. So this scale went from being a line, which is what a scale is, to a plane, meaning a whole body of data, instantaneously. And when I looked at this, I said, whoa, I found something here. I don't know what this is, but whatever it is, it has to be natural law because it has math embedded in it. Like, for example, the Fibonacci sequence.
Uh-huh.
Now, you have to understand, I took 26 semesters of math and loved every minute of it. So math is something that's very real to me. It's not just something that you do with a pencil on a paper. I see it when I look at things. I see it. As if the car goes by, I'm doing calculations, you see? So then I thought, wait a minute. I wonder how many of these other scales are also actually 7-level scales that had not been developed all the way because I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients and making notes. So knowing what I was looking for, I inspected all the other scales. And in a short period of time, each of them developed into a 7-level scale. And when it did, it manifested mathematically. So now I had 32 scales, each of which had 7 levels and had mathematics embedded in it. I said to myself, this looks like a new subject to me. I never saw anything like this. And my next thought was, I could go from helping people by the hundreds, which is what I had been doing as human development engineer, to helping people by the millions if I put this in a book and get it out so people can have this data. So I'm going to have to write a book. So the first draft of the book was completed in December of 95. And I then sent it to colleagues of mine, all of whom had graduate degrees in a variety of subjects. And they all responded very positively.
Super.
They had different responses, but the responses were distinctly positive. Now, I have to tell you, that was 28 and a half years ago. So some version of this book has existed for 28 and a half years, and I've been seeing people use it and respond to it. Nobody has ever said, I don't get this. This doesn't make any sense, or anything like that. Nobody, what people usually say is, wow, you found something here. This is cool. So I spent the next 25 years of my life writing the book.
Wow.
And you have to understand, first I had to discover the phenomena, the septemic phenomena. And I pretty much already told you how I did that, although I did find 3 more scales as I was writing the book. Then I had to take these data and use them to construct a workable philosophic system. Now, you have to understand, as an engineer, I'm only interested in facts and results.
Correct.
You see, to a scientist, the final product, if he's successful, is a theory, like the theory of evolution or the theory of relativity. But to an engineer, the product is a thing that works. So I had to make a system that would work all the time for every person. That took 20 years.
Wow.
Then the most time-consuming aspect of this was expressing this in a way that would make sense to the average reader of English. And I know I succeeded at that because I've been watching people respond to this for 28 and a half years. People get this. This is not obscure because it's natural law. So, for example, I'm sure at some point when you were a student, there was some point, maybe you were 12 or 13, when you first saw the Pythagorean theorem. Right? Now, it doesn't take too much studying that, working with it. Usually people get it on the first day to say, oh, yeah, I see this. This makes sense. I get it. And then you got it for the rest of your life. So that's because it's natural law. In other words, it's not counterintuitive. It makes sense to the average person. So when people look at these scales, they say, yeah, I see this. This makes sense. And they're able to use it. So this is a very user-friendly system. And I went out of my way to make it user-friendly because what I did is I would write a version of it, release it, and then I would get feedback from readers, students, clients, colleagues, and so forth. I would get feedback, and then I would rewrite it. So this book was rewritten 6 or 7 times. And each time it became clearer, which was my intent, to make it clear to the reader what the subject is and how you can use it to benefit yourself.
Definitely.
So that's how I got this.
And how can the system, Jim, be used to improve interpersonal communication or maybe resolve conflicts as well?
Okay. So I sort of told you in a general way how this is useful, but let me give you an actual example.
Yeah.
Let's say you had a girlfriend who was having relationship problems. Right? You see your friend Mary, and every time you see her, she complains to you about her relationship. I don't know what I'm going to do with Joe. He's drinking, he gets in fights, he spends all of his money. You know, she has a problem with this guy, right? So you get tired of listening to this. So you say, Mary, let me show you something. And you open the book to the scale of relationships and put it in front of her face. Now, when she sees this, she's going to say, you mean there's a scale of relationships?
Exactly.
And you say, yes, this relationship that you have been complaining to me about for 6 months, where is it on this scale? I guarantee you she's going to want to know that because she's having trouble with this. So she's going to look at it, and in a matter of seconds, something like 15, 20, 25 seconds, she's going to find a bracket. She's going to say something like, well, I can see right away. It's definitely not 1, 2, or 3, because that's the top of the scale, and we're having a lot of trouble. So it's got to be 4, 5, 6, or 7. See, that's progress. She narrowed it down to 4. So we say, okay, great. Why don't you just read the text, and then you can get it exactly. So she reads the text. You can help her as a tutor would. And then she comes back, she says, well, now that I read this, I can see we're at level 5. See, she's been living with this relationship. She knows what's in it. Now that you show her the data, she can analyze it. She can say, we're at level 5, and she will have a realization. She'll say, no wonder we're having a lot of trouble. This is near the bottom of the scale, and it explains why boppity 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 bop. See? And then you say to her, you can improve this relationship by moving it from level 5 up to level 4. She'll say, you can? Yes, it tells you in the book how to do that. Oh, then you say, but before that, let me show you something else. And you open the book to the scale of sexuality, because that's part of this relationship, right? This is her boyfriend. So the same thing is going to happen. She's going to look at it and say, you mean there's a scale of sexuality? And I've heard of this. And you say, yes. You don't have to tell me if you don't want, but for your own enlightenment, where are you on this scale? I guarantee she's going to want to know that, because you're opening a door for her to resolve this situation. So in a matter of seconds, she's going to find a bracket. She's going to say something like, well, I can see right away 6 or 7 have nothing to do with us. And also 1 and 2, I don't even understand those. Those are way over my head. So it's got to be like 3, 4, or 5. You say, okay. So go ahead and read the text and you can get it exactly. She's going to want to do that. So she reads the text. She comes back and says, well, now that I read it, I can see I'm at level 4. That explains a lot. It explains this, this, and this. And she may also say, and Joe, he's at level 5. No wonder we're having trouble. Those 2 levels are in conflict. So if you look at that scale, which is, of course, in the book, you'll see some of these levels are clearly antithetical to one another. Mm. So then you say, well, you can move yourself up this, and you might also help Joe move up too. Sure. Okay? And then you can say, but before you do that, let me show you the scale of allegiance. Anytime a relationship deteriorates, it's always because allegiance has deteriorated, right? So she's unhappy with Joe. So she's now going out with Frank behind Joe's back. See, that is a lessening of allegiance. She's gone down the scale. So you go through the same process. She'll find a bracket. She reads it. She comes back. She says, well, I can see I'm at level 4. Not so great. See, I foresee that I have fallen down, and I should move myself back up to 3. You say, yes, you can do that using the book. And then she might also think about Joe. Where's Joe on the scale? See, she might say, well, actually, he's at 3. He's at a higher level than I am. Or she might say, well, he's at 5. That's even below me. Now, I could keep doing this for another 5 hours, going through all the scales, because in a relationship like that, it's very complicated. And you're going to easily have 12, 15, 17 different scales that can be used to analyze this relationship. So by the time she finishes that, she's going to know all about this relationship. She's going to know exactly what's been going on, and she's going to decide what she wants to do with it. Mm. So now what she does about this is not our business. She might say, I'm going to get a copy of this book and show this to Joe and help us to both move up these scales. Or she might say, at the other extreme, she might say, I'm done with this guy. I don't want to deal with this anymore. We're done. Now, in the second case, you might think she's going to be upset, and that is not true. She will be happy. She will be relieved. She will say, thank you, Sana, for showing me this. Yep. Because now I understand what's going on, and I realize I'm banging my head against a brick wall. I'm not doing this anymore. See? So she gets rid of this dumpy guy, and she gets somebody better. Okay? So that's how this works, as an example.
Well, super. Great. And how can someone start, for our listeners who are really intrigued and they are eager to get started with this, how can someone start incorporating Septemics into their personal growth journey, Jim?
Well, the first thing I would recommend to your listeners is that they go to the website, which is septemics.com, Septemics, where you can see what many readers have said about it, what many journalists have written about it, what the reviews are. You can read sections of the book itself. And there is a pre-recorded introduction to Septemics, which explains this subject to a new person in about 15 minutes. Or if you prefer, there's an essay, which is similar. It explains the subject you just read the essay and it explains how it works. By the time you do all that, you're probably going to want to buy the book. Okay, and I tell you in the book very specifically how to use the book. But let me say a little bit about that. This is a textbook on a new subject. I tried for years to fit this into some pre-existing niche. Cannot be done. It's like trying to get an elephant into a Volkswagen. So you have to study it the way you would study a chemistry text, a physics text, an economics text, a biology text. Okay, you start on line one and you study line one, say, does this make sense to me? Yes. Okay, now you go to line two. And you just continue that until you finish the book. Then when you are done, go back to the beginning, read it again, and find your level on every scale. Now I have to emphasize, every person is at some level on every scale. So the data is just sitting there waiting for you to access it. Now, of course, you can ignore it, but it's much smarter to use it because it will help you.
Definitely. Wow. So, listeners, we will mention the details in the show notes along with this episode. And Jim, we had to cut this short because of the time constraint. However, a really, really advanced, profound concept. I mean, it's really exciting to explore the wonderful concept you have discovered and you have put it down in such a relatable and resonating way for all the people around the world. So thank you so much for sharing these extraordinary insights with all of us today. And it's clear that Septemics offers a powerful, a very strong, clear lens through which we can better understand ourselves as well as the people around us. And thank you once again for taking time out and coming on the show.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And for our listeners who want to dive deeper into this revolutionary system, make sure to check out Jim's book, Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. You can use the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And as always, we appreciate you joining us here on Mindful Living. And if you found today's episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with those who would benefit. Until next time, keep expanding your consciousness and living mindfully. Thank you.